Right? So we're up to the middle of Eis Reish Gimel, Tov Yud Aleph, Hemshach Ayin Beis, Chilvik Aleph. So I don't know about you, but I've been like haunted a bit by these inyanim. You think about it. And I want to just say a few things, Teich inyanim here. I think I said yesterday, that's critical that that when you learn Chassidus, especially Zachatif in Zachen, it's a whole different place. You're going into it's not the conventional tools you use when you try to analyze anything. Like there's a marshal they give like what is the sound of one hand clapping? So right away when you hear that, what does that mean? It means nothing. But it forces you to think differently. Because we think in certain terms, everything is based on certain rules. And this a lot is based on a whole different set of rules. The second thing is, in psychology, there's a lot of talk about the unconscious and the conscious. Like right now, there are things you're conscious of, things you're not conscious of, things you know, and things that you don't know that are causing you to behave a certain way. Like all the memories a person has from childhood, all the experiences that affect you even today, they're in the unconscious, you can't remember them. Maybe you have a memory and sometimes you don't even remember. Like all the things that happened to you before you were 3 years old. People don't remember before 3. I don't know what your memories are. For most people, the first memory is around 3, right? And even then, a glimpse here, a glimpse there. Except a few exceptions where there's a very serious thing that happens. Right? What's your earliest memory as a child? Around 3? Echt nicht. Du gedenkst noch mit anderen Teilen bekommen bei mir immer.
Ja, kann man. Wir können den Stream already.
Okay, but
What you're saying is correct. Go ahead.
No, but I'm just saying most people. I mean, I remember my option is just one image or something. Yes. The point is that there's so much inside of a person, much more. Whatever you see, there's much more that you don't see. It's like the tip of an iceberg, basically the consciousness. So he really, when he's analyzing Ratzon B'Tainug, he's talking about the Keser, which is not the Esses Firis Gluis, which means it's not the Keiches Pnimim. Keiches Pnimim you're conscious of. You could say, what am I understanding now? What am I feeling now? The Chesed. But when a person, let's say, is Machnes Eirech, there's so much going on behind the scenes. Why are you Machnes Eirech? Because you grew up in a home that was like that. You remember from your earliest age, that's what you do. Or M'shem Mitzvah. The point is, there's a whole bunch of forces at work in every person's action. That's much more that you don't see. Ratzon and Tainug are not just as people simplify what I want and what I like. It's not Ratzon ich will and the Tainug I enjoy. Because you could say that about anything. As I said, you enjoy ice cream, you want to go outside now. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Ratzon and Tainug as they are in Keiches, as he calls them, Keiches Atzmin. That means they're hidden. You can't even talk about what you want right now is irrelevant. You know what Ratzon is talking about here? The Ratzon was the Rambam Paskant in Hilchos Gerushin, the Keifnei say Acheim Reitzani. The din. So the Rambam says, what do you mean Keifet? By a get. They force him to give a get. The Keifnei say they force him Kipshute. Kashmis. So the Rambam says, you can't force get Musa, you can't force. So he says, because he really wants, Aid really wants to do Torah mitzvahs. And thus, was nicht, is mitzad Yitzrei, who shall say. It's the Yetzer Hara that forced him not to do what he really wants. So where's that Ratzon? Here's a guy yelling, I don't want to give a get. Or B'chal, a guy says, I don't want to do Torah mitzvahs. So the Torah Paskin, it's not just he's lying. Or he doesn't know what he really wants. Better said, he's not lying. He doesn't know what he really wants. What he really wants is Torah mitzvahs. And this is not even Chassidus, this is pure Nigla. So that Ratzon, where's that Ratzon? It's not Begoli. Most of us don't even feel it. Most of us, when we do a mitzvah, is because of that Ratzon Atzmi, because we were trained to do it. But there's such a Ratzon, as they pass in the Torah. Maminim b'nei maminim. And the same thing, there's a Tainug. So you're talking here Ratzon and Tainug on that level. I just want to say that because it's critical to really appreciate what he's talking about here. And there, so it's really very complicated because you're talking about something none of us have ever seen. So the truth is, you have to probably learn these aces as 25 times till you begin to grasp what he's talking about. I was just, because I was going it over, and I was, a lot of things are very, very darkistic. Al Capone, so what did we say so far in this? We say like this, that there's the Rotzen and Tainug, and the Rabbi Rashab wants to say here that the Tainug Atzmi, the one that's completely concealed, like when you say Shashuyim Lefonov, the thing that the Melech, feels the Tainug was like he says, Behelim, that will only comes revealed when a person actually uses Chochmah. It's not revealed in Rotzen, basically. That's the main thrust that he's saying here. That, because remember we're talking about the Mamutza. You want Chochmah to be the Mamutza between Hamaitzel and the Netzolim, Chochmah. Because Arich, which is Rotzen, is not a Mamutza. Because Arich is Rotzen, Tainug is Tainug. That's why he said they're Hofchim. They never really meet. They both come from the Etzem HaNefesh. And in some of what he says they're both two parts of one. But like he said here, Rotzen, you could have something you want and it could completely disregard the Tainug. Like you said, you could have a person may have a Bar Seichel has Tainug from Sichlim, but if he doesn't want to hear it from Sichlim that are not Elikus, doesn't matter how much Tainug there is. And also the other way around, a person could be a Kalsha Bekalim, like you said, I'm going in the last verse, could be a Kalsha Bekalim, but the times that you see the Rotzen Pnimi comes out, the Rotzen Pnimi, so it doesn't matter, even if he has all the pleasures of Elam Hazah, Sof as Aid, he'll be Meisa Nefesh for it. So you see that Rotzen, even though Rotzen is part of the Etzem HaNefesh, but Rotzen does not, Rotzen can control Tainug, because like he says, because Tainug is only Tainug is the Etzem that doesn't come revealed, and Rotzen is an expression of the Etzem. That was what he said. But Chochmah, on the other hand, that's what we're learning now. Chochmah is outside of the Etzem HaNefesh. It's already a faculty. It's no longer the unconscious. Chochmah is an actual keach. However, what we just learned yesterday was that Chochmah is the expression of the nefesh. And he explained how is that. In other words, Chochmah is like two parts to it. It's outside of the nefesh, but it's an expression of the nefesh. And he explained the difference between human beings and animals. We say nefesh ha-maskelis. You don't say nefesh ha-chesedes. That a person is the nefesh of a human being. What distinguishes a human being from an animal is not midas, it's seichel. And he explained because animals have feelings. He gave examples of feelings for their children. They protect their children, etc. Mashenken Adam has chochmah seichel. It comes from tikkun, and that allows him to rise above his emotions. An animal will never change its stripes. A human being can control his feelings. You can have feelings for something and not act on them. An animal cannot. An animal has no self-control like that. And it's not because of negative thing. You won't prosecute an animal if it kills another animal because that's the way it's programmed. An animal goes hunting and it kills another animal, it's not murder. A human being does it, it's murder.
Aren't we training canine dogs or aren't there smart animals, how they hunt, to make their brain?
That's when human being. When human beings get involved, everything gets screwed up.
I'm saying that.
Look, it says by the Mabul, the corruption of the humans was so much it gives out the animals. I have a dogma for it, by the way.
What?
I have a dogma for it. You know that there are people there is in Manhattan. There are therapists for animals, for dogs, dog therapists, and dog hospitals.
Right.
Well, because one guy told me he works there. He said that this couple is so dysfunctional that they made their dog crazy. Their dog gets nervous, and they picked up all the tenuos from the other human beings. Humans can make, but an animal on its own is exactly. I mean, I'm talking about a behemoth that's something.
Okay, but aren't there people behemoth? Okay.
There are people that behave like animals, once, unfortunately. That's what
the animal sees in the person.
Exactly. I said that you were back Wednesday night. It says that the animal will never attack a human being because it's Selam Elikim. But how I'm is that? Because it doesn't see the Selam Elikim. It's concealed. Ayeka. Daniel, it wasn't even a miracle. The lions won't attack a human being because they see the Selam Elikim. But unfortunately, most of us, it's hidden, the Selam Elikim, as they get this. Yeah, so it doesn't see it.
The Rebbe used to walk past his vicious dog, and the dog used to
Say Chiadonin.
Ay, Moshe, hey. This is best as a cynic, huh?
Just not like the person.
He's not a cynic. He's not a cynic. Just confused generally.
Conscious or subconscious?
Right. So we just said, I thought you would appreciate it, that the whole discussion of Ratzon and Tainug is talking about the unconscious. You've got to know that. We're not talking about anything that we can relate to directly. Whereas Chochmah is the conscious. Basically, when you see...
Chochmah Tzemah was the unconscious.
No, Chochmah Tzemah is the Chochmah within Arich, in the unconscious. That's the Mamutza, but Chochmah Gluya.
Okay.
But remember, Chochmah Tzemah is already the beginnings of...
Okay.
It's like, it's starting to... In Chanami, Chochmah Tzemah is the unconscious, like the collective unconscious. Anyway, so that's what makes a human being. The mile of Chochmah Seichel. I'm just giving a summary of what we learned yesterday.
Basically, it's Seichel. The person has.
And specifically Chochmah.
Ayes Midas can sein verdorben.
Or faked, the midas could also be unique by a human being. Doesn't say, but it's not what makes it. When you say a human being, what's macht a human being? You could say nefesh hamaskelas, abas seichel, nefesh hamedaberes. He speaks. Yeah, he's basically explaining why he's answering a question. He said, "L'cheira harei kol hakeches mesardim eman nefesh." On line 5 in Perek Reish Gimel, all hakeches zayin doch mesachdim eman nefesh. When a person's chesed is not from a nefesh, it's also one with the nefesh. But he's explaining that Chochmah is more, because it's what makes the Adam, the Nefesh Adam, unique. Remember, the Nefesh is not Chochmah, but Chochmah expresses the Nefesh better than anything.
The Chochmah basically controls.
Yeah. So that's the story.
What you got, man?
No, it's the garden. Don't worry about it.
Gardener.
Ken Kumash better.
That's a Mamutza?
The Rebbe Rashab, it's a mutz between the Kof and the Benot.
More than
Not him, Obama, not him.
more than Vuchim says that. About that. More than
Okay. So that's the key. Ratzon and Tainug are mamash and etzem nefesh. Hakeches atzmim. That's the unconscious. That's as close as the nefesh as you get. They're also not the nefesh. Remember, even when you say yechida, it says chamisha shem is there. The neshama, it doesn't have really any tziyur. It doesn't have any shape and form. Even yechida is still one of the 5 names of the neshama. So we talk b'chlal, just for the record, yechida and chaya, they're called tainug and ratzon. Atik and arich. And then you say neshama, ruach, nefesh, is seichel, midas, chabad, chagas, nehi. Just for the record. It doesn't say it here, but that's the picture. So when you're traveling outward now, Chochmah is the bridge between the etzem, between the unconscious and the conscious. Chochmah. That's what it comes down to. So let's start from middle of the page. It's a line that starts, see the line? Right smack in the middle. Yeah. So that's why it's called nefesh hamaskelas. You say a person's a nefesh, like nefesh hasichlis. You don't say nefesh hachesed, nefesh hagvura, nefesh hatiferes, nefesh harachmanis. Nefesh hasichlis, or as he calls it, nefesh hamaskelas. Because even though the nefesh is not chachma v'seichel, the soul is not chachma v'seichel. Ach li is the keches, the mehusa nefesh. Atzma hu asibel mitziyas chachma v'seichel. Hadizem esachid bei. However, the mehusa nefesh becomes one. And because it's expressed through Chachma Seichel. Chachma Seichel, in other words, if someone to say, okay, who is a human being? A Jew? You say a person is a human being is a Tzelem Elokim. But someone say, where do you see the Tzelem Elokim more than anywhere else? You say in the Seichel of the person. He's able to Me'ech Shal Ta'alev. He's able to think about ideas that are beyond him. An animal has what's called Seichel Hanikna. Seichel that helps it survive. How to hunt, how to protect. Some animals are very shrewd. They trick, but you see humans, they're not a match for humans. No animals ever got together and built weapons to kill humans. They may be naturally stronger, but we figured out how to. So you see, a human being has the ability, for good and for bad, to rise above nature, basically. An animal can only go within its own orbit, its own clock. The sun rises, animals have their own cycle. As smart as it is, but it's all seichel within. So you say a nefesh is not seichel, but seichel is an expression of the superiority of a human soul.
What kind of seichel is a tree have? Like if you plant a tree against a
no, the seichel, but seichel hanikne. It means it's the seichel. It's like the same seichel a clock has. It also has a clock. Also has a so-called, not a brain. It's like a seichel of a computer in a way. But it's a seichel that you can predict it. It never changes. It's part of what it needs to do. Like a tree's roots will change course to find water. That's known. Is that seichel? We call it nature. I mean, look, animals are very shrewd. Their animals, for example, build up immunity. If you poison them, they build up immunity to it. Animals, if you see a trap, they won't come back. But it's all seichel to survive. It's the basic seichel to survive. If we only had that as humans, we would not be able to build anything bigger. Anyway, not even getting into elokution. Anyway, it's so misachid, the seichel so reflects, and the nefesh so much expresses itself in seichel that you can call it nefesh hamaskelis, even though the nefesh itself is not seichel.
Nefesh seichel, that's the same.
An example would be, is not here, but Chassidus, in other places it says, for example, seichel we all know is in the brain. It originates in the brain. Yet, when you write, you can write a davar seichel. But no one's going to say the hand is a seichel they could think. The hand is a tool that the seichel uses, just like a pen is not smart. The pen is just a tool that the seichel uses. So the seichel would be the thing that's nisachid, that expresses the nefesh, not the hand. The hand is just a tool of the seichel. I'm just trying to point out that there are things that are like, that they're so close to the source that they can confuse that they're like the source. Seichel expresses the nefesh, even though it's not the nefesh itself.
So
this is a critical point because this is what makes it a mamutza. You understand? Like, for example, if the Rebbe sends a shliach out, or he sends a guy that's not a shliach, there's a big difference. Even though both of them are not the Rebbe, but the shliach is representing the Rebbe. He's representing what he wants, whereas the other person is not. So like the Rebbe said, doing a shliach and a shatchen. A shatchen is not pure shliach. A shatchen has an interest, money or other interests that he may have. A shliach is shluchas shlodim kameseh. I'm just pointing out, but the shlich is not the meshaleach, but a shluchas shlodim kameseh. Similar, like chokhmah is the same idea. It's not the nefesh, but it expresses the nefesh like nothing else can.
But the expression is actually through machshava diva ma'aseh. So when you say it's var seichel, it means that the midas doesn't interrupt the seichel as it comes down. Is that true? What I'm saying?
You're going. Yeah, it's a true statement, but he's not addressing that here at all.
Yeah, but when you say something's a bar seichel, that means the seichel can come down and be expressed. Everybody's seichel is sort of good, but it's not. If it's over the midas, then it can come down.
I understand what you're saying. He's not even talking about how a person behaves. He's just talking about the etzem muhus, like just explaining the personality of a bar seichel. I understand what you're saying, because you could have also a bar seichel that doesn't act according to seichel.
Then he's not a bar seichel.
No, he may be. Potentially, he may be. You expect him to be.
Aristotle.
I met a guy
Not
brilliant
Right.
mind, midas ros.
Yeah.
Brilliant mind, computer chip in his mind.
Does the seichel have his own
But
agenda?
let's not go off tangent because it's not such addressing that. It's a different topic, Lagamri.
Yeah.
What he's talking here is we're simply trying to understand.
Yeah.
He's talking more abstract here. He's talking about just the etzem muhus,
That's not
that a human being
It's higher than the
is a nefesh has maskelis, has a nefesh that an animal doesn't have. We have a nefesh that you can't say an animal has a nefesh hasichlis or nefesh maskelis. That's what he wants to say. So we see from this, we understand from this, chokhmah is not atzmus hanefesh. That's clear. It's not the essence of the nefesh. V'yeshlo siba, and it has a cause, has a root, has a cause. Siba.
Does it have its own agenda, chokhmah? Besides expressing what the nefesh.
We have bchira, so it can have its own agenda. A chokhmah v'tzadik will be only learning Torah and only interested in the Eibishter ones. But he's not addressing that here. This is not here. He's just talking about that. Chokhmah, he's like he says, has a sibah. That means it comes from somewhere. So it's not etzem hanefesh, but the sibah for chokhmah comes from the etzem hanefesh. How is it possible that a human being can be abstract and can rise above midas and can have the whole idea of what chokhmah does? Is because he has a nefesh. That's a nefesh hamaskelis. It didn't just fall in. This chokhmah, it comes from somewhere. We have a special nefesh that provides it. In other words, you can't. An animal does not have that nefesh.
What means nefesh? Neshama?
What means neshama? Nefesh. It's just words.
Okay, so
what it really means. Call it the best term I use in simple English: energy. It's a source of energy.
Why not use
A soul means nothing.
Why not the brains? Why say nefesh? Why not saying that a person has brains?
Because it doesn't stop there. The brains come from somewhere.
Where's the nefesh come from?
God. I'll explain this now. No, it's a good question. It's a close kasha. Let's just say it like this. No. Think of it like this. There's electricity in this house right now, right? It's coming through, we all know, through wires.
Right.
When it comes into this house, it doesn't have any shape and form. Right? It goes into light, into this, it gives light. It goes into a refrigerator, it becomes a refrigerator. Same electricity. It's going everywhere.
Electricity is going everywhere.
So electricity, where does it come from? It comes from some source of energy. So in the motion, the nimshal, the source of energy is God. The Eibishter gives off energy. Energy can then go into different things and energize different.
Why not say brains? The Chacham is
But
brains.
brain.
God didn't give the behemoth brains, and He gave a person different type of brains. A behemoth has brains. A person has.
Let's define brain. A corpse also has a brain. A person that's dead has a physical brain.
Right.
So you're not talking about the brain. You're talking about what gives the brain power to work. That's called energy. It's not talking about the physical brain.
Okay.
So a dead person has a brain and has a hand, but they're dead.
Right,
So what makes this hand?
The neshama went out.
Oh, so they say you right away have to use the word nefesh. You can't just say brains.
That means it's not that the neshama is giving me brains. The neshama is my electricity, and when electricity plugs into a refrigerator, the refrigerator runs because it has the mechanism.
What's that? Hold
Electricity
on.
goes into the
Exactly right. And the part of the mechanism that's a brain starts to think. The part of the mechanism that's an eye sees, and the part that's a mechanism that's a hand does what a hand does.
Right.
So you got it right, exactly right. One electricity that doesn't have shape and form, that's the nefesh,
Right.
and that nefesh
That's the
gives breath.
neshama. So you're calling the neshama and the nefesh asichlis.
So that's the question. Why is it called nefesh ha-seichel? So the answer is because seichel expresses the nefesh more than my hand does, more than the eyes and nose and mouth does. That's essentially what he's saying.
This is what I don't understand. Why is the brains?
What brain? I told you, a brain is nothing. A brain is a lump of clay.
Lump of clay. Okay. Let's move on.
There's a process here. You're talking. There's a process how it works.
No, you explained it for 10 minutes now. Why it's called?
When we say, no.
You were saying, you explained it.
Yeah, let me go even further. The moment that a husband and wife conceive a child, b'tara, b'kedusha, God decides at that moment, the third partner, to take a neshama from somewhere and stick it into this seed that was fertilized. No one understands the mystery of it, right? Can't understand. Suddenly a physical seed, like a seed in the ground, suddenly has a force of life. That's called the beginning of a pregnancy, right? This thing starts growing.
Go ahead.
What's that?
I was thinking a little different now.
No, that means the Eibishter took a nefesh, because this seed can go nowhere. Also,
Yeah, correct.
he gave it the bracha, and now you have a neshama. You did this on a neshama beguf. It starts coming down in stages. 9 months it takes, and then a baby is born. This baby, I'm not getting down to the levels how much of the nefesh is revealed, but bottom line, there's a life here.
Right.
This baby has a body, but it has this nefesh that Hashem put into it, that is now going to grow together. And we're sitting right here. You are a neshama beguf. The neshama on its own doesn't have any shape and form. It's a force. Like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, nefesh elikis, nefesh abamis. That's maybe how you call it. One nefesh is interested in elikus. One is interested in Ayin Beis Volume, survival, whatever. Now the nefesh itself, like he says in Tanya, Poshet Yeshla Eser Keches, Perek Beis, right? He starts that there's Eser Keches, Nishtal Shalom, Eser Sviris. This nefesh has Keches in it. Think of it like a force of energy that has a lot of potential in it that can go many ways. Generally, it's 10 Keches. Chochma Bina Das. I'm just, that's the basic. So the nefesh is not the Keches, but the Keches come from the nefesh. But he's saying here is which Kech is most misachid, is the closest to the nefesh, expresses the nefesh more than any other. It's not Chamidus and Chagas Nehi, it's Chochma, or Chabad in general. That's what he's saying. So Chabad is most reflective of what the nefesh is like. But still not the nefesh. As we said here, the nefesh is Otz and Tiny. There's so many things the nefesh has. The nefesh, you can never fully define a nefesh. Like the Baal Shem Tov says, we don't know how precious a neshama is. So of all the things, no matter how smart a person is, how much chesed he has, even if he's perfect, the neshama has always much more potential. Because the neshama comes from lakus. The neshama is like the reservoir of water that has unbelievable amount of water. The keiches is like the pails of water that are transmitted into this world. So when I sit with you, we sit here with each other, we communicate. Part of that neshama is expressing itself, hopefully, through our interaction. It could be through chesed. You do a chesed to someone. It could be through chokhmah. Chokhmah is the highest of the 10 keiches. Why? Because that's what he's really getting to. Because it's the mamutza. It's like what brings... Now, if we were only Balamidas, you'd never really be able to be expected to serve the Eibishter. You can't... Animals do not serve God. They serve God like nature does. But it's not through Aveda and it's not through Bechira. Whatever animals do, they do exactly the way they were planned. It's like a puppet. You can't expect an animal to be responsible for its behavior. So you can't reward it either. A human being, because he has seichel, can say, you know what, even though right now, for example, give an example that an animal can decide to fast in Yom Kippur. There's no such thing. An animal has to eat, is going to eat. And therefore you can't expect it to fast because it doesn't have that, it's not wired like that. A human being, you're hungry. Today's Yom Kippur, and you have to fast. That means your seichel is mizgaber on your bidus that want to eat, and says, today you don't eat. And we train our children, they're hungry. At some age, you train them slowly until they come to a point where Mayach Shalta Alev. And the same thing with everything. You go outside, you have a taiva, you don't do it. An animal doesn't have such a thing. Now, there are psychologists that say humans are animals. And you can't blame somebody who meets a woman, and that's it, like it says in the Rambam, Hilchos Kedushin. Odom Pagashisha B'Shuk, and that's it. But that's not living a life of Kedusha. So Kedusha demands, that means if the Torah demands that we could control ourselves, that means we have the ability. So why do we have something that animals don't have? What is it? So that's what he's saying. We have a nefesh hamaskalos. We have a special nefesh that gives you keach. You don't always live up to it. That's because you chose not to. But you can be expected to do it. And the Alter Rebbe in Tanya makes a big thing about it. In Perek Yud Beis, is beteva til dase. It's not just you teach a child don't cross the street, or don't steal, or don't be selfish, etc. That is the nature of the nefesh of a human being. Is nature. The born nature is meich shal tal lev. A little child doesn't have that because it didn't come out yet, like any talent. I mean, the best way to explain it is, if you really want to go, is potential of a human being. You meet these geniuses who play music unbelievable. When they were born, no one had a clue. You see a child come out of his mother's womb, you don't know what the potential of this child's going to be. Is he going to be a tzaddik, a rasha? What's he going to be like? The potential is hidden in the unconscious. When a person starts, either a child is a prodigy, just begins to play, or through training, you suddenly discover unbelievable potential. Right now, here, how much potential right here in this room here? You know how much potential you have? I mean, I know you've exercised some of it, but how much potential a person has, impossible to know. Because it's like a reservoir. You know how much water is in a well? Who knows how much water is in a well? All we know is what we can pull up. And you pull more and more and more. How much oil is there in the oil well? No one knows. I mean, they have estimates, but it's serious amounts. So the nefesh is full of energy that's concealed. And the keiches, so to speak, are like the drawing out that energy. Chokhmah is the primary drawer, the first step of coming from the nefesh out, and that's why it expresses the nefesh like no other.
Is that the first differentiation between people? Like Kesef Shevakeva is with God, everybody's the same. Where does it change?
I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's Bapashtas the nefesh hamaskalos. The truth is, in the Torah, when you look in Chumash and Bereshis, it says Selam Elikim. It doesn't talk about Seichel altogether. It says Adam was created with Selam Elikim, Adam Achav. But you can see a little later when it says Eitz Adas, Tevera, you start seeing that these are intelligent creatures. I'm talking about if you read the Torah without knowing anything. You never met a human being, you just read the Torah. You'd say this human being is different than all animals because he has some type of Tzelem Elikim, whatever that is. This is all this is Perek Beis of Tanya, basically. The Alter Rebbe brings the psukim from beginning of Bereshis. And he explains what's Nishmas Chaim is Meteiche Meprimiyusei Nofach. Chelek Elakam Mal Mamish. And then he goes on to say the Keiches. Now Chochmah is the number one. Another aspect you could say is Chochmah is also the central nervous system. Because remember, the mind doesn't just control. He's not saying that here, however. The mind is like Reish Hashanah, Reish. It also controls the whole body, but that's not even what he's mentioned here. Anyway, that's the nature of seichel.
What controls emotions?
It depends on whom.
Is it a brain?
According to Tanya, the emotions is where the Nefesh Habamis rests. So the Nefesh Habamis controls the emotions, mostly. However, you have Me'ach Shalta Alev,
Which is brains.
which is the mind that with the Nefesh Elekis is Sheda. Let me put it to you this way. Someone comes over to you with a telemarketer calls you, and they're very good. They emotionally manipulate you, and you're about to ready to buy a shmata. And then your men say, you know what, call me back in an hour. They'll never let you do that. They'll say, if you don't get it now, you never. Why? Because they need your emotions. They can't wait for you to think about it too much. Because you think about it, you're never going to buy it. That's a perfect example. I'm giving a stupid example. Same thing with that type. Most people's mistakes that they make because it's an emotional impulsive error. If they waited overnight, most 99% of mistakes won't be made. When a taiva chaptana mentioned, it becomes insane. And then later he thinks, what did I give away? I could destroy my whole life. I mean, people do things
We understand. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, everybody has this. Emotions have such a power. He says in Tanya, Periktas, he said, just like the blood of the heart rushes to the brain, the emotions rush to the brain, they take control. What's Sheikhid Ya'aver Eine Chacham? The Rebbe always says, Eine Chacham. The Torah calls him Chacham. A person, Sheikhid is blind, is a wise person, yeah, because no matter how wise you are. Moshe Rabbeinu himself had to recuse himself from pasking about Aaron. It's his brother. No, it doesn't matter. In the Gei B'Dover and Gendikt. You know, if we learned that lesson, we'd be in good shape. People in the Gei B'Dover, I don't care whether you know it or you're not. You're emotional about it.
How does a Rav paskin in the community where he knows everybody in the community, and how does it even function?
So it's a big shot. That's why do you think in the court of law they sometimes demand the trial should be out of the city?
Change the venue.
And the same in Apitate also, by the way. If you can demonstrate that the Rav is too entangled, you can make that claim. The problem is we have a problem that everybody has an agenda. Even in both ways.
Everybody's friends with the whole community.
No, but it also goes the other way around.
Right.
The people that claim that, they wouldn't say that if they thought the Rav was going to pass them their way.
Right.
Which is also not good. We got a mess either way, however you twist it.
How does any small community exist? Any small, even in the
without Yerushalayim, let me just tell you this. Without Yerushalayim, you don't exist. And with Yerushalayim, you exist.
Yeah, but Moshe Rabbeinu disqualified himself.
Because he's a tzaddik, and a tzaddik is like that. And the Rebbe himself, I'll show you letters with the Rebbe, and it was not, the Rebbe said, I can't get into this because these are people who work for me or something like that. People who had issues with Rabbi Chaylikov or something, the Rebbe said, take him to Din Torah. You can't ask me, I work with him. And the Rebbe wasn't trying to avoid the issue. I don't know what the Rebbe did behind closed doors. But al pi halacha, there are halachas. There's no question about that. Listen, the first problem is Yerushalayim. It's not about the Rabbanim. The problem is we don't have Yerushalayim. But as Rav Paskin is not like you get angry at him, and that's it. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't start with the Rav did right or the Rav did wrong.
Let's listen. When Ayin Beis Volume, how do we get to the Rabbanim?
No, I'm saying.
No, but I got brains. Well, they say there's a Medrash Hanelam. It's so Nelam, no one knows where it is. That after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, the Eibishter took away brains from the Rabbanim Yerushalayim. So the ones that have brains are corrupt, and the ones that don't are Yerushalayim. As they state.
Wow.
It doesn't have to go further. No names. Samod Nezach,
it's very simple. If you don't water a plant, the plant dies. If you nurture a plant, it gives fruit. And the same thing with any person.
Even if
it doesn't exist, it exists often it hates.
You're going to die if you don't eat properly. Your body goes into starvation. Your own body.
The Rebbe said, you got to be gay, they won't smoke up for blending.
Hello?
It's McKenzie Masber sein.
Good morning.
At the time, this man was very caught.
Yeah, that's for sure.
What was the Rebbe saying?
That a taiva, what did he say it about?
Yeah, I know, I took my...
Oh yeah?
But what? The Rebbe was
Put him involved. Talking about the gay movement. And the taiva is only the rega
The Rebbe
cotton.
didn't negate
I'm a
the
few blocks away.
But that rega cotton, unfortunately, is quite powerful.
I don't understand what they
Anyway,
said.
it's not
You
enough.
Muslim.
Yeah, well, the taiva is for yeah. Okay, fine. So they have that taiva. It's a fraction of that taiva.
So there is a Nefchoch with that.
Moshe, that's good news. There's hope for you.
Exactly what he goes through. It does,
First of all, okay, let's move on here. Der Rebbe Rashab will uns aufheben, sagt, "Gora heiche Madrege da, wir schleppen mal ab, sind wir viel Tachtes." No, I didn't mean it that way. I understand what you... No, the idea is absolutely correct. It's the way you apply it. I didn't mean it that way. I meant to say all the others.
He says it can be fixed. He compared it to kleptomania. Remember, porn for Rabbi.
Yeah. Anyway.
Believe me, you put into your practice.
V'yesh lo siba rak hasiba lach... Okay, let's go on. V'yesh lo siba rak hasiba lachach mihi atzmus da nefesh. V'hainu b'chinas ha-tainuk sheba-nefesh, ha-tainuk hu atzmus ha-nefesh hu b'chinas ha-pnimi sheba. So now he's adding, and now this is where he's bringing the mamutza back. So what is chokhmah? What's the siba? Where does chokhmah come from? What does it reflect in etzma nefesh? He's adding a whole chiddush. Because till now we just said what makes a human being unique is the nefesh hamaskelos. Fine, clear. There's a seichel that allows him to rise above nature. Okay. Now he's saying where atzmas nefesh does it come from? It comes from the tainuk sheba nefesh. Again, remember, tainuk does not mean taiva. It doesn't mean pleasure from eating something or from physical things or this. Tainuk sheba nefesh is does the etzem ha-nefesh has essential pleasure in elokus.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And that's V'b'chinas ha-pnimi shebei. Asma V'b'chinas ha-pnimi shebei. U'kanal, sha'rotznu chitzenis v'ataynig u'pnimi. As we said earlier, rotzen is only chitzenis, because rotzen is merutza. Is you want something, you go for it. But tainig is the pnimi is the pnimis ha-nefesh, v'etzem ha-nefesh. V'hu sibus keich ha-chochma gam b'mekere v'shosh ha-risha. And this is the sibah. This has to be read very slowly because he's going now a whole new thing. That tainug is the sibah, the makar harishon of seichel. Where if you go through, where's chachma come from? So we're going to learn chachma comes from chachma stima. Chachma stima is rooted in tainug. So both chachma, how is it in its unconscious root?
When we say tainug,
1 second.
Tainug is emotions?
No way.
And timing is the same for everybody. It's one of these Godhead things, and the change starts.
And we're speaking here now. It's without distinction between one type and another. Just talking the etzem mahus of a human being. This is in the pure form, without.
But what is the differentiation between you and him?
He's not discussing that here yet.
That's when the real.
Yeah, but
Timing is higher than timing.
No, 1 second. Let's put it this way: we all have seichel here, okay? That's what he's talking about. There's an equalizer. Everyone has a tzelem elikim. We're not talking here about distinctions between humans. This is an analysis of the etzem inyan of a human being, not one as opposed to the other. Don't jump the gun. Without getting this, we're not going to be able to discuss
This is
the distinctions.
undifferentiated, you're saying at this point?
Yeah, it's like we're saying the Torah says that you have tzelem elikim. And Tanya says kelik elikam al mamash. Which person is he talking about?
That's
He's talking about all the shamas.
Somebody has a tainug to learn, somebody has a tainug to tell.
That's not relevant here. He's not talking about that here.
That's why the seichel works differently. That's what I'm looking. That's what I'm thinking.
Look, let's put it this way: if when the Eibishter starts wiring a human being, before he makes the distinctions, there's the etzem neshama. All neshamas are in one place. He's talking here in the root of it all. Without not going to any distinctions, just going to confuse matters. Don't apply this to you yet. Let's put it this way. Let's first understand it in its concept, then we can apply it to us. The place that applies to us that all of us have unconscious, all of us have conscious, all of us have tainug and all of us have chachma. That's all that's relevant here. The distinction between one and the other is not relevant to this discussion, for sure not. Just like in Tanya, he says chelik elikam mamish. It's not doesn't matter one to the next. So basically what he said now is the chachma, both in its shadish harishon, in its root, and in the way it expresses itself, all are rooted in tainug.
Is that the reason why the story with Rabbi after eating the wine and eating a steak and wine, he was able to come up to the Chachma? Is that connected?
Probably, but it's probably connected. It's probably connected. I think here, however, he's spoken the other way around. That it's not
the etzem tainug.
That's how you awaken the tainug, but the etzem tainug is what causes the Chachma to be. He's going to explain it all. And now goes this Maimar HaMuzgir. Okay, 1 second. Chachma, b'chinas the tainug shemesanig ba'adavar hu maskil boy. It means it's rooted in the tainug because since a person has pleasure in something, in other words, etzem enjoys it, he wants to understand it. And he's bringing out in Maimar HaMuzgir like this. The Gemara says, when they asked he asked the Tana, this Talmud asked the Tana, where you should begin learning. He said, Mokim Shali Bechofetz. Why? Why not just tell him, learn Torah, the Eibishter's Torah? So clearly, because when you like something, Li Bechofetz, you want it or you enjoy it, you're going to learn better. So you see that Seichel is connected to something deeper than just the Seichel. So he's Bavarnik. The Gam Masha, Le'elam Yilmed Adam Mokim Shli Bechofetz. When you say, because Chofetz also means will. He's Bavarnik that Chofetz is really Tainug. So also when you say that Le'elam, a person should always start learning B'mokim Shli Bechofetz, where his heart desires. That's what it means. Ha'ikru Mitzad HaTainug, Ha'inu Asha Rotzen, Hu'im HaTainug. The ikr is there not where the person wants to learn, where the person has pleasure learning. So for whatever reason, this mokim can be refers to, I think in the Gemara it refers to the place in Torah or the place Begashmis. You remember?
It's both places.
Both?
Both places.
Both. In other words, where you should learn. Should you start learning Chumash? Should you learn Chassidus? Should you learn this and that? Or where in the Gemara, which is Masechta. So some people like Allah Karav, Surah, Allah Shemul, Mamena. So this person has a natiyah. People's personality lean toward different type of interests. Some people like history. Some people like halacha. Some like primis atera. So in a sense, the like is what you're usually going to want to understand something that you enjoy more than something you don't. So he's saying, that's me'ikah mitzad tainug. That means the rotzen, the will there goes with the tainug. You want it because you have pleasure in it. But rotzen b'loy tainug. And here's a very important bavarnish. There's also a rotzen without tainug. Like we said earlier, a person could, this tainus cholim. For him it's aiming, even though fasting is painful, but a person can choose to do something that's not pleasurable. It could be akshan is the kedusha. For example, tainus cholim. A person has a cholim and it says there's a lot of fast on Shabbos. Even though Shabbos is not allowed to fast. Because his rotzen is stronger than the pleasure of Shabbos.
He's scared of death.
Because he's scared of death, so he's allowed to fast.
But the unconscious tainug that we're talking about could be fulfilled.
Yeah, that's another story. But
That's what we're talking about the whole time.
Yeah, but we're talking about tainug. The tainug atzmi of the nefesh wants to enjoy Shabbos, not fast. Because Shabbos is Einik Shabbos.
Glass of wine,
Yeah. So if it's just an example. Another example, what he said earlier, that a person who has seichel loves seichel, but if his will is one that he only wants to learn seichel in a lakus and not learn it in things that are outside of a lakus, even though there's a great pleasure, let's say in philosophy, his rotzen will not allow him to do it. Basically, there's a rotzen with a tainug, there's rotzen without tainug. You can do Mesiras Nefesh. He said earlier, a person dies on Kiddush Hashem. It's Mesiras Nefesh. No one has pleasure in dying. It's the rotzen of the person that ultimately was gaber over the tainug. We're talking here tainug where you feel the pleasure. I'm not talking about the tainug atzmi. We're talking about the tainug.
The whole time talking about tainug atzmi, though.
No, but the tainug atzmi sometimes but the tainug atzmi sometimes is revealed also. You could actually, like a person eats Shabbos and enjoys a meal on Shabbos, that's the mitzvah. So the tainug atzmi is reflected in the tainug.
Sometimes it's theory between the tainug atzmi and the.
That's what he's saying here. So that's what he's saying here.
Okay.
That's so. Here, 1 second. Let's understand. But rotzen b'lei tainug hainu rak b'derech kabbalah seil. Ze gam ke yochel ifel lahaskel. A person can learn Torah and use seichel simply for one reason, not because they enjoy it, but because the Eibishter said you should learn Torah. So you're learning mitzad kabbalah seil. V'zeu rak mitzad mesidus u'mesidus nafshel hazeh. That's only coming because he's dedicated and committed to it. V'ikar b'zeu b'chinas. Okay, this is Api Kabbalah. The ikar is b'chinas hadash ba'avira shemachriach lahaskel. Okay, remember we spoke about the Golgotha. There's the brain,
Skull.
There's the skull. Between the skull and the
meninges.
Crown of the head, there's a space. Kabbalah calls it avira al gaba hakrema. Krema is the crown of the skull. So there's avira. That avira is also a level. We didn't discuss it till now. That's what it's alluding to. The dasha ba'avira. Avira has also.
Space, there's das.
Yeah, there's das.
But that's because it's
But that's a das. That's like he says from Rotzen. Shemachriach lahaskel. It's not a das. It's not a das that's based on brain. It's not in the brain.
It's
a dash of Rotzen. It's like
connected to Arik, right?
remember, because everything has its color. So even Rotzen also has the 10 parts in it. So there's the Ratzon. In other words, a person can learn because they push it like Seichel, they enjoy it, and the person can learn because it says so. Obviously, he's talking here the first level. It's the deeper level. But I just want to. I know what you're asking. Let me address it in a moment, okay? If you're talking Tainug and Ratzon Atzmi alone, completely unconscious. That is those two forces are connected to Elokus all the time. That's clear. What is confusing here is because from time to time he starts expressing in expression form. Like here, when a person's learning with their heart desires, that's already you're feeling it. I mean, the teacher is telling the student what is your heart desires. He's asking him, and that is not Tainug Atzmi. But that Tainug Atzmi is not unrelated to the Tainug. That Tainug revealed Tainug is not unrelated to the Tainug Atzmi. That's where it's a little thing here. Basically, what he's saying is that that Seichel is rooted in Tainug, and that's why a person. Now then he goes back to the Gili. That's when a person enjoys something, he wants to understand it. That's already Tainug Gili, but that's rooted. It's just an expression. Why when you enjoy something do you want to understand it? Because Seichel is rooted in the Tainug Atzmi. Let's put it that way. That's what it looks like he's saying here. And that is expressed in the Mokum Sheli Bechafetz. And just as by contrast, there are things that Seichel can be rooted not in the Tainug. It can be rooted because of Kabbalah Sale. Because you want to do it because the Torah says you should do it. It's just
that's when there's a disparity between the Tainug Atzmi and the Tainug Gilui.
Right. Or maybe the other way, between Ratzon.
Give me a call on the way back. Make sure.
That's what he said here.
No, I'll be
Look, this is very dense stuff and very, very.
You were able to do it?
beginning of the week. I'll call you. Talk to you. You gonna be here? Yeah.
By the way, the safer came. The safe is out if you need a safer.
Beginning of the week.
I don't know if anybody announced it.
Okay, be'emes, Tainug Atzmi hu shenasa l'bchinas Seichel v'chachma. And the truth is, what's that? Be'emes, the truth is Tainug Atzmi hu shenasa l'bchinas Seichel v'chachma. Now he's going even further. This is like a real build-up here. Remember, let's just get back to the on course here. He's trying to establish how Chachma and Tainug have a direct link. That's the bottom line. And Ratzon and Tainug don't have that link, and Chachma and Ratzon don't have that link. Because the Chachma is the critical bridge between the Tainug Atzmi of Hashem, the Maitzil, and the rest and the lower levels. So that's what is the case that he's building here. So till now, he built that Ratzon and Tainug have their own opposite relationship. That's clear. Now he's talking about Chachma. So he's establishing that Chachma. First thing is that Chachma is outside of the Nefesh, but it reflects the Nefesh. Now he's up to what part of the Nefesh does it reflect? The Tainug. That's what he's talking about. So the first step was that Chachma rooted in Tainug. Because you have pleasure, that's why you go ahead and you understand things. So Seichel is connected to Tainug more than in a very profound way. He's building the case. Now, the next step. Ube'emes, Tainug Atzme hu shenasa b'chinas Seichel v'chachma. Ube'emes, in truth, the Tainug itself is what becomes Seichel and Chachma. I mean, there's a real big chidushim here. In other words, he's saying that Seichel and Chachma really is a form of pleasure. It starts from pleasure of the nefesh.
And it
looks like Seichel and Chachma.
And that's why some people gravitate to different things. Because they have Tainug in what they're doing.
Ulechein, 1 second. Ulechein haskalahu k'fi efen ha-Tainug dafka. And that's why the Seichel is lefi efen, is according to the way, to the Tainug. The Baratzen, when it comes to will, when it comes to will, you can conceive of an idea that's opposite of the will. In other words, simply put, a person can want something, and you can know immediately that's not a seichel thing. It doesn't make sense what he wants. Again, for good or for bad. You see somebody wants to go and kill themselves, God forbid. It's not a seichel thing. Or wants to do something destructive. Or a taiva for a moment that later will cause them who knows how much pain, aggravation. So you could the hospital hepech harotzen. Mashenken hatainug ef sheyaskel hepech hatainug. You cannot conceive of something that's opposite of pleasure. Uhu hagishmak sheyesh le bahadover. When you have pleasure in something, You cannot be masculine. You cannot think of it in a different way. You cannot. It's not a contradiction, because the seichel is a pleasurable thing. You understand it that way? Something's bothering me. I don't know.
He's breaking it down to human DNA. No?
Taking a gashim to the form. Timing can't be hepech of timing.
Right.
This is the timing that you have. That's the timing. It's a machine can have timing, right? The efshashiaskol hepech of timing.
Sure.
No, this, which means b'shas ma'aset that the person has a timing. He can't think anything different, which means that, which could also maybe mean that he'll justify his timing, not up in seichel, but the person's timing.
It's a lower tag. The revealed tag could be different.
That's what bothered me, because if you let's say a person has tainug in something that's not good, so just like he wants something that's not good, he could be yaskil hepech. So what's the difference? That's what I don't get. He says in rotzen you could lahaskil hepech harotzen. In tainug you can't. You can't go against the geschmack that you have in the thing. Why? Because it's so geschmack.
Because so geschmack.
The Gili to Tainig, is it a lower world? Is that the whole thing though? When you're talking about higher Tainig, you're talking about the Tainig upstairs, and the Tainig downstairs, the lower world could be different. Two different Tainigs. The Tainig Atzmai is more or less the same for everybody.
But what's the logic that you can't be maskil hepech? You could be maskil hepech, but you can't be maskil
Sure,
hepech.
take it in a gashim to form. You could think within your mind. You could think both ways. You could think like this. You could think like that.
Okay.
That's a lot,
Right.
But in Taino, once you have the geschmack thing, could you have the opposite? It could be completely wrong. But if that's the geschmack,
Because you're meshuchet, because you're now.
It's not even meshuchet. It's because you're involved in it.
When
I'm
you
taking
hear,
from the gashim to form.
when you hear about other people's taivas, and you say, "What the heck? Like, what is?" You can't relate to other people's taivas. You could understand it, but you can't relate to it. What kind of pleasure do you have? What kind of pleasure do you have by I don't know what?
You can relate to it sometimes.
So you can't.
Sometimes you totally
can't
can't.
understand
Sometimes
it.
you can.
Ratson, you could understand other people's point of view. You could understand what they want.
He's
It's a
explaining
time.
here
It's
the
not in
whole
your
thing of
world. You
Chachma,
can't relate to it.
how the Chachma
Really?
works. The energy comes in, and what filters it goes through. And where's the Chachma go? He's not talking about Hepech Kedusha, he's talking about the DNA up there. Certain people enjoy history, so they have time in history, so their brains are all the time going to be yearning to see history. Some people have time in understanding how the space shuttle runs.
That's lower Tainig.
That's
We're
lower.
talking about the disparity between somebody's lower
Is
Tainig
it
and
possible
Tainig and
to
at the
convince
same
yourself how to
time, they're all
enjoy
the
something?
same basic Tainig upstairs.
I enjoy something, how to
That's part
convince
of the
myself not to
Abishur.
enjoy it. I can decide to do it or not to do it. How to convince myself I don't enjoy it? I do enjoy it.
And by will. if
My
you could-
will, I can change my will. If I know how damaging it is to my life, to have relations, to smoke weed, whatever it is. I can't say weed doesn't taste good. It does.
You want to elaborate?
No, I don't. No, I'm just saying that the point. I'm just saying. I never smoked weed, actually. I'm just saying the concept.
That's that.
If I enjoy something, I can't convince myself I don't enjoy it. I do enjoy it. But I could choose to do it or not to do it. That my mind could say this is a bad idea. I shouldn't want to do it.
And it does. And it does.
That's what
everything here that
And it
people
does.
form.
And it does. If you know that this Abishur doesn't want it, or you help wise.
No, but that's what. No, I understand what you're saying is correct. So that's the lashon baratzon. How to yachal haskell hepech harotzen. Comes to will, you could think against the will. You could have a whole seichel and comprehend something that's opposite of the will that you have, or opposite of a will. When it comes to pleasure, you can't comprehend something that's opposite your pleasure, because you're so immersed in it. That's what you're saying, right? You also said that. Is that correct? Because you're so immersed in it, so you can't convince yourself otherwise. You can't comprehend something otherwise. Is that what he's saying here? Okay, maybe. I'm just wondering. It's interesting. Because my argument would be is the reason for that is not because Tainug and Seichel are so bonded, because pleasure is so damn powerful that you just can't think anything else. It so blinds you. That's what I would say is the reason. Whereas Ratzon is just, you keifer yourself. Kabbalah Sel. Kabbalah Sel is easier to fight with Seichel.
What's the Seichel?
With Tainug, you can't fight with
So you
Seichel,
can say
basically.
you're gonna
Right?
You can say
You do something out of Kabbalah Sel. If you're sitting and learning here, not because you want to be learning, just because you want to, I could challenge you and say, why are you here? But if you have pleasure in it, I have no way to, there's nothing to challenge you, because you enjoy being here. What do you mean, why am I here? I want to be here.
The taiva.
Understand what I'm saying? Kabbalah Sel doesn't have pneumius. He's just doing it because you were forced to do it.
You can always argue that. You have
And maybe that's what he's saying.
You
Is
can
that what
always
you
argue-
guys are trying to
You can always
understand?
argue that you can have pleasure from Kabbalah Zarm.
Now, doctor, you're always going a step ahead of us. It's true, you can have pleasure from Kabbalah Sel, but number one, if it's rooted in Kabbalah Sel, it's not the same thing. Number two, it's not what he's really addressing here. Obviously, ultimately,
You
they,
were addressing.
well, he said, because Kabbalah Sel is his words before. The Rebbe Rashab says that you could say, you could be maskil something, rak mitzvah nesina mesida. I think that is what the pshat is. Is that what you're saying as well? Or you said differently than what I just
understood
said?
a bit differently.
Huh?
I understood a bit differently.
He's just so bekitzer, he's not explaining. That's what I'm trying to. It could be it's all the above. Bottom line is, you can't make a case with seichel against something that you have pleasure in. It's bottom line.
Mhm.
That's what it's saying here. I don't understand it completely because I think you could make a case. You could have pleasure in a terrible thing, and in your mind at the time can say, "Listen, I may not win this war, but I know this isn't good."
From Aristotle.
Is that what he means to say by
I know he's not saying here. Maybe he's talking
You
here.
convince yourself out of a pleasure that you don't like it, but you convince yourself not to do it.
No,
That's
you
Ratzon.
can. No, one second. You can maybe not convince yourself because pleasure is very strong, but you could understand it's your seichel. It's not
That's
exactly.
Ratzon, right? Because you're already deciding not to do it, but I still enjoy it. I can't convince myself not to enjoy it. I convince myself to do it or not to do it.
Okay.
To want, not to want.
Okay, fine. I understand. Okay, you can go on. Like Leah's, I'm sure I would like to compare notes with some of the. I heard that Moshe Morozov left some notes on Ayin Beis. He was a big Moscow. So I'm going to try to get a hold of it. No, it's because it's interesting to see if people who learned this before, how did they understand this line? I'm sure they were not the first ones that stopped here. I mean, a lot of things in Chassidus I picked up from people. Ariel would tell me things he heard from Moshe Grari, who heard from Grainim, who heard from the Rebbe Rashab. There's a lot of Teresh Shabbat Peh around this stuff. And sometimes a line like this, someone may have said something. It could be several ways because the Rebbe Rashab is not explaining himself here. I hear what you're saying. I'm not convinced it's one way. Maybe that's pshat, maybe not. It's an interesting line. It's very interesting. Okay. Let's go on. Okay, one second. Okay, so even though this is true that Tainug and Seichel are so intertwined, but because Chochmah is not pleasure, in other words, it's a separate faculty from Tainug. That's why we say that Tainug is only a cause, a cause for Chochmah. Remember, he just said now that be'emes, HaTainug atzmei hu shenasa b'chinas Seichel. But you can't say it actually that Tainug actually has become Seichel because Sof Seichel is outside of is not Tainug. So therefore you have to say that Tainug, the pleasure, is the source and cause for the Chochmah. Ava be'emes HaTainug.
That's the problem with the Mamutza now. And I was going to say, since it's separate, he's going to find out the connection. What's the Mamutza between Chachma Tzumah and Tainug? He's making another gap now. It's going to be imponderable again.
No, but I think what he said in the next slide.
Hold on. But he's going to answer that. You'll see, because he's going to go into the two things in Chochmah. The Chochmah has both sides. Remember, Chochmah is more complicated than Chochmah also has bittul in it. He's not talking about that part now. I think that's what it comes down. Maybe the Moshe is going to explain this. Okay, but in truth, Tainug itself becomes b'chinas Chochmah. Yeah, this is relevant exactly what he's saying. Why is he going so detailed? Because he has to create a real bridge. So he's saying Tainug is Chochmah, but it's not mamash Chochmah. Because if it's a mamash Chochmah, then you're back to this square one. If it's completely outside of Tainug, again, so he needs to have this thing that's constantly both. Chochmah is Tainug goes in Chochmah, but Chochmah is not actually Tainug. This is exactly the struggle of where these two meet. Yeah. You got it right. Well, derech moshel. Kumel derech moshel. Misha reitze bebinyan bayis. Giving now an example. I hope this example clarifies things. Sometimes examples of chassidus need more explanation than what their examples are. That's also possible. So derech moshel misha reitze bebinyan bayis. Someone wants to build a house. V'yesh li tainig binyan habayis. And he has pleasure in the concept of the house, the home. And he wants it b'peil. So we established what? He wants to have a building and he has pleasure in it. And he wants to do it b'peil. So we have both Rotzen and Tainug in this building of the home. And because he has pleasure in building a home, that causes him to conceive of ideas, hamtsos, all kinds of ideas, b'keich hamaskil, with the keich of his mind, shaboy, and mamsi b'keich hamaskil shaboy haskolos beifani tzir chet chadrei habinyan va'avonim noyis ad lahafli. It's interesting, Moshe. So he conceives of ideas with his mind, with the keich hamaskil in his mind, all kinds of ideas of the way he's going to shape the rooms in the home, and what kind of beautiful stones he will use, ad lahafli, most wondrous way. A very gorgeous home, basically. It's interesting he adds ad lahafli, not just to build a home, but in other words, because the root of it is that the ratzon, the will, and the pleasure to build a home, that causes the seichel to start thinking, what kind of home do I want? And comes up with all kinds of ideas. This makes a lot of sense. So it's all rooted not in seichel, they're rooted in Tainug, it's rooted in Tainug and Rotzen.
But if he goes from Tainug to Rotzen, then up to Seichel?
He didn't say here, it looks like he started with Rotzen first. Mishareitze v'yeshle Tainug. I guess it starts from Tainug. It starts from you have a pleasure, therefore you want, and therefore you think. Well, let's continue. The B'keich Tainug, lo yhoyu kol protei amtzos b'tzurim hanoim b'seder habinyan. In etzem pleasure, just the pleasure of having a home, he doesn't have all these details, all these detailed ideas in the beautiful and Surim Noim, the beautiful images and the order and the structure of the building. Doesn't have any of that. On the other hand, the whole Seichel, Tainug can't conceive of all these ideas. But on the other hand, all these ideas would not have happened if you didn't have pleasure. Why would you sit and be thinking what kind of rooms to make and how beautiful your home should be when you're not interested in the home in the first place? So the whole thing began with that interest, which is the pleasure of it, the Tainug in it. Okay, this I think may help us clarify quite a few things. Okay, let's continue. So the whole thing began only because of the koyach of Tainug that began from the etzem habayis, that he wants a house, a home. And now, after the building is all finished, and he goes for a tour to check it out. He walks from walks from room to room. And has great pleasure. And he has great pleasure from the beauty and splendor of this home. This Tainug is a very primi and atzmistic thing. It's not an external pleasure. It's not he's just enjoying something, because it's the fulfillment of the pleasure that began before he built it all. All the ideas that came originated in that pleasure. So now when he walks around there and sees the end, Seif Ma'asav Machshav Tchila, basically, you see the end product. What happens is the initial Tainug is awakened, and Mesanig be'etzem nafshe, mamish ma'abinyan. Pasha the etzem nefesh of his, where it all started, is enjoying and has pleasure in this binyan. Ach emesay yisani b'zeh dafke shabinyan nasa, api b'gzeiris chachmose. But when does he have this pleasure? Only dafke after the building was built according to the instructions and orders of his chachma shehiskil mitchila be'efen habinyan, according to the guidelines and the seichel and the chachma that figured out and assessed how this building should be built. V'nasekach b'mechuven b'chol haprotim, and it was built that way exactly according to plan in every detail. Oz mizanik b'y be'etzem nafshei. That's when he has pleasure. Okay, so we have back and forth, back and forth. It starts with pleasure. Without that, there's no seichel. On the other hand, pleasure alone doesn't do it. You need to have the seichel. And then goes the other way around. Once it's finished, that's when it goes back to some pleasure. And that is the pleasure is only possible, not because of the pleasure, only because it was done according to the details that the Chochmah planned it.
It's very interesting. It's just like the original Seder Estalshus that we always learn. You started with Tainig, with
The Saga.
and then you go down to Rotzon, and then you go down to Seichel. Let's say, we're back to square one, the old Seder Estalshus.
That's good. That feels good. You know?
So what does it mean that time becomes seichel?
Hold on. One second.
Rotzon.
One second, it's not finished. This is a motion. It's going to finish. Ve'im yachsel b'davar. This is good. The moshel is changes the whole picture. Actually, you can understand it. It was so abstract before. Ve'im yachsel shekayach. We have to say thank you to the Rebbe giving us a moshel. It didn't force us to sit here. Ve'im yachsel b'davar. And if something is missing in this building, shenasel leikafi sichli v'chachmasei. And something is missing in this building, and it was not done according to the seichel and chachma, the plan. Mizbatel hataynud legamri. The whole pleasure disappears. Mizbatel is gone. Is annihilated. She'ena misanig by klal. 1 second. Why is that the case?
Then you have a big fight with the contract.
This is a major problem because usually, no, he's saying the whole pleasure. She'ena misanig by klal.
Wow.
Well, so one little detail in a bathroom and then the whole thing just goes kaput.
Yeah, you don't see
In
it.
the
People
middle,
throw it out
we-
and start over again.
We see it happen.
So we can continue.
Harizeh Hira Gemura. So this is a Hira Gemura. This is a clear and a Gemura complete demonstration. Shachachma hu hatainug. That's it. It's airtight proof that Chachma is tainug. Because if it wasn't, because the tainug will not be there, you'll be the opposite of pleasure if it wasn't fulfilled according to the Chachma, and the Chachma is only possible because of the tainug.
Could it be that?
That's what he says here. Oh boy.
Has
So
that,
chachma
That was
like-
good durchtracht. Okay.
No, but
Now we have to, I know, how does it apply to what you said
it
before?
makes a lot of sense.
I think he's not
Because
finished.
when you know-
Shekayach did. Did Rebbe Rashab make sense?
No,
Moshe.
yeah, the Rebbe Shammai,
My question was, you make sense.
yes.
Okay.
Now I understand all my energies.
Like we once had a Fabrengen, and there was a guy didn't know, so I was describing the Alter Rebbe. So a guy gets up and says, the Alter Rebbe is such a giant. You know? No, it's good to know that. I'm just kidding. It's good.
I mean, it makes sense. That's why when you lose Tainig or something, the Chachma arbeit nicht. That's what he's saying in essence.
So what is
Simon,
it that
Simon,
time
Simon,
is chachma?
Continue.
Well, so let's continue. We didn't finish. Let's not jump to conclusions. There's plenty more here.
Yeah, plenty more.
No, this has to be applied going back to the whole lines they say. Okay. Hazero. So Hiro Gemura, Shachachma hu atainuk. The Mashi Hiskal Betchila Befan Abinyan Befan Kav Kav Dafka Hu Mitzad Atainuk Shalei Be'etzem Davar Abinyan. So the first step is that all the Haskalas, all the things he conceived of with his mind and all the details to build it this way, that way, is Dafka Mitzad Atainuk, because the Tainuk in the Binyan. There would be no pleasure, no one would sit down and make any such plans. Rakshashon B'chinas Pshitas Legamri. It's just adding, in the Tainuk is Pshitas, it's not a building. And you can't live in Tainuk. You know, Tainuk is dafka from the details. But it wouldn't exist without the Tainuk. There's no such thing. In other words, the whole Chachma would not exist without the Tainuk in the binyan. Valkein dafka kasher nasa kafi chachmasei ozu masanik. He's adding like this. Since the whole Chachma doesn't come from on its own, it's coming from the Tainuk. So only dafka when he does it according to the Chachma, that's when he has the
From
pleasure.
a future Tainig you're talking about.
No, first the Tainuk in the building.
First you get a Tainig just thinking
To
about
have a home. One second, to have a home. That Tainuk is the whole reason that you sit and figure out all the detailed plans of the
Yeah,
home.
but that's a future Tainig. That's not until
Who cares, future, not future, but but at that moment he has such pleasure.
Also pleasures in having a house. Even before you have it, you pleasure in the idea.
It could be higher or lower than
It doesn't matter. Hold on. And that's why nobody's saying something like this. Since the Chachma is not really rooted in its own, It's rooted in the Tainug, and so only when you do it according to the Chachma, that's when the pleasure. In other words, the pleasure basically is saying two things: I want a home, but I want a home with these details, and if those details are not there, my Tainug of a home is worthless, basically. So the whole Chachma of conceiving of the details comes from Tainug. That's why if you don't do it according to the Chachma, it's not it. But when you do Ozul Misanik, by the Fisha Chachma, who are Tainug.
That's why when a kid in yeshiva doesn't learn well, because he has no time in learning. That's why he's getting bad marks, because he's not applying his mind. And it's very hard to apply your mind when you don't have time.
What if it comes out nicer? I understand if you
hold on, one second, let me just think. So you're making a case here. The Chachma who are Tainug. But they didn't finish. Because the Chachma was able to finish the Chachma who are Tainug.
What you're learning, enjoy. Or what you're doing. And therefore...
Okay, very clear. The Tainug is conditional, it's not a prat. It's conditional on this whole... Basically, Chachma Seichel is a tool of Tainug to get what the Tainug wants. Let's put it that way. It's not an outside thing. It's not a collaboration between two forces. There would be no Chachma here. There'd be no sitting and thinking all through the details if there was no Tainug. So Tainug is essentially creating a Chachma, a whole system. And that system, Chachma is that Tainug, except it's in the form of Chachma. And without it, that's basically what he's saying. And this is what it means that in Tainug, in Chachma, Tainug is in the Slapshus Pnimi. Not like in Rotzen, if you remember. It's a Slapshus Pnimi. Hainu Tainug hu sibus ha-Chachma shemaskul b'keich ha-Chachma rak mitzad ha-Tainug. So he's defining the Slapshus Pnimi in a new, interesting way. What means something is a Slapshus Pnimi? Because the sibus ha-Chachma shemaskul b'keich ha-Chachma rak mitzad ha-Tainug. If something comes solely due to something else, that means that something else is mislabish completely in it. If it didn't come solely due to it, let's just for argument's sake say you have partners here. Someone has Tainug and someone else wants the home for a different reason. You wouldn't have this Slapshus Pnimi because it would be coming from two things. Here the Chachma is coming strictly from the Tainug. Okay? שהתיינוג הוא בסיבס החום שהזכו בכיכם רק מצד התיינוג. והוא עצמי הוא שנעשה בבחינס חוכמה ושכל. And that Tainug itself is what became Chachma v'Seichel.
What does that mean?
Huh?
What does that mean?
Well, he said it a few times before. It goes both ways.
The Levush is...
The Sibba, the reason for all the Chachma comes from Tainug.
Okay.
And the Tainug itself, he said before, the Tainug itself it became Chachma and Seichel now. In other words, when you're sitting and making the detailed plans, it's not a Seichel-dika thing per se. It's a Tainug-dika thing. They're just using Seichel as tools to fulfill its desire. That's what he's saying.
So the Seichel is...
In other words, that's why...
Seichel is the Levush?
The tool, you can call it whatever.
Because you were just saying, like...
He doesn't use the word Levush, he uses it...
He used the word... Which word he just used that sounds like Levush?
Slapshus. Slapshus Pnimi. Oh, but that has Levush. Slapshus Pnimi, that it means the Tainug is completely dressed, manifest in the Chachma Seichel.
So the Chachma is the Levush of the Tainug.
He doesn't use the word Levush, that's why I don't...
Slapshus
is more of a verb, it's not really... I understand, I wouldn't use the word Levush mamish because it's too external, I think. Okay, 1 second. It's understood that the Ispashtus HaChachma, the extension of the Chachma is only from the reflection of the Tainug, the details of the Chachma as it manifests in the details of the home, that's only a reflection of the Tainug. And the primis of the Chachma means the primis of what's going on with the whole Seichel is the primis HaTainug. He's just qualifying to, don't think that, every detail of the home, that itself is Tainug. That's more the Chenis, the heart of it. And the primis of the Chachma Seichel is the primis HaTainug, that he wants to have a home. Up to the point that in the root, the first root and source of Chachma, it's mamish rooted in the hidden Tainug, Atzmi, in the Nefesh. Remember, we're talking here both revealed and outside, both ways. So it all starts from the Etzem HaNefesh has pleasure in a home. Similar to the Sava Kodesh Baruch Hu Liyas Le'Dira B'Tachteinu. Also Dira, a home. So that's in the Etzem, completely unrevealed. That causes you to go extend yourself out, and now I need to have, out of the unconscious into the conscious world, I need to make a plan. There's no way you're going to get a home without a plan. The fact that in your deepest parts of your soul you have the pleasure will not get you a home. I'm talking in this sense. So in Hashem, he went to create a whole set of shtashos. So he extends himself out into the conscious, makes a plan in all the details. But the whole plan is completely infused. It wouldn't exist if there was no original pleasure. Why would you do that? So everything, all the Chachma Seichel is an extension of the Tainug. It is the Tainug really, at work. But it's now working through details. When you finish the home, that's when the Tainug is revealed that was once hidden. Because when you walk around and you see the home, as he said, you have deep pleasure because it fulfilled the Tainug that was in your unconscious from the outset. So now, the conscious building, according to the conscious plan, brings you conscious Tainug that all rooted in unconscious Tainug. That makes sense? Absolutely, right? One second. Now the Chochmah Seichel is therefore really just really Tainug, except it's in the manifest in the tools of Chochmah and Seichel. And then he adds that the Chetzenius of the Chochmah Seichel, meaning the details itself, is obviously only a reflection of the Tainug. But the premise of the Chochmah, the whole innovation and all the inner details of it is rooted in the Etzem Tainug in the deepest possible place. That's the picture here.
Does that mean every part of the thought process you're going to enjoy?
It doesn't say that. It doesn't matter. Maybe not. Some things could be tedious.
Some
He didn't really. He's not really going into that because it's not so relevant.
I think subconscious.
The bottom line is what you're doing is bringing you pleasure, whether it's immediate pleasure or it's later. It doesn't matter.
I would answer differently.
Hold on. Look, because people want to go and do all kinds of things and a lot of aggravation, but they know at the end of the day they're going to get something that fulfills their desire. So that's why they're ready to tolerate aggravation. I don't know. It doesn't go into that. But
I was wondering because when we say that Chachma Hu HaTainug, Tainug Hu HaChachma, I was wondering how.
He doesn't say he says a Chachma Atay. He doesn't say Tainug Hu HaChachma.
It goes both ways.
It goes both ways, but I know. But he keeps saying Chachma Hu HaTainug. He doesn't say Tainug Hu HaChachma. He says the Tainug goes into the Chachma, but Tainug Hu HaChachma would mean that Tainug doesn't have anything more than Chachma. Chachma here has nothing more than Tainug. That's very relevant for the whole context, the Mamutza part.
When we say Hu Atzmei Hu Shenasa V'Chinas Chachma L'Seichel.
Yeah, but when you look before and look at the Lashon, he says Tainug Hu HaChachma. Ha'Hirah Gemur Sha'Chachma Hu Ta'Tainug. A few times he says Chachma Hu HaTainug. He doesn't say exactly that Lashon opposite. Yeah, it's definitely mislabish in it. That's for sure.
And he still cannot feel it and still considered it.
One second. I want to see now, go back here, what he meant now before. Now maybe we can understand better. Yeah, now makes sense. Because someone that wants something, yeah, you can go ahead and be maskul things, but if you have a geschmack, you're not going to go make a plan of a home. That's hype of the Tainug. The whole thing is rooted in the Tainug. I don't know if any of us said that. Maybe you did. Maybe I don't know. That's not what I thought. That's what he probably means. Because Rotzen, you want something, so what? See, basically what he's adding here that we didn't know before, that we were just talking about Seichel B'chlal. Now we're talking about Seichel is rooted in the pleasure. The reason we understand things is because we have pleasure in it. That's what he meant. That's what he meant. V'emes.
And that's by everything we understand?
But no, I'm just going back here. He says, "Be'emes hatainig atzmei hu shenasa b'chinas seichel." Now you understand? That's the mashal. That's what he means. Be'emes tainig itself becomes b'chinas seichel. What does that mean? That was the problem, because till there, the first half of this Perek. 1 second. I'll leave the Mahusan.
Yes.
How do you explain it with a skull? It's still there.
He's gonna conclude at the end of this Perek. 1 second. Clears the Muslim. Okay, it's a whole different. You see, he began by saying that Chochmah is rooted, reflects Nefesh HaMaskelas, that Seichel is the reflection of what makes a human being a human being. Then began a whole new discussion, the connection to the pleasure. That pleasure, Atzmus HaTainug, the Etzem HaTainug, in the what, like you said here. Tainug shebenefesh, tainug hu atzmus hanefesh b'chinas hapnimi shebai. V'hu sibes keich hachochma. You see, we don't think like this. You see, the question is like this. Let's not talk about a home. When you use your seichel in general, is it driven by, like in the marshal here, like of the home? When we use our brains, the answer is you're saying, yeah, that why would anyone use it? Huh?
We have another go with it.
Let's take when do we use our seichel? Moshe, how many times a day?
Your emotions, which is really tainug.
Emotions is midas.
Drive, which is midas.
No, tainug in here is not emotions. I'm telling you that now. It's not emotions.
Okay, it's okay, but okay, okay.
But pleasure seeking, so then you use your seichel to obtain pleasure.
Okay, people use seichel to build a business. That's the same like the home. The seichel is to get what they want.
Right.
Does anybody just use seichel for no particular purpose?
Yes.
To get something?
Yes, but the answer is subconsciously there's a tainug there that you might not be in a revealed way, but there is subconsciously.
Hold on a second. Well, look, a person wants to understand something. The reason is because you get pleasure from understanding, from like a certain control. Knowledge is
That's
power.
why kids have the hardest time in yeshiva because they don't have that time. And you're working, you're saying to them at the end you're going to have tremendous time.
Moshe, you turn everything into group therapy here.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding. You going back to your childhood? No.
Yeah, obviously, you know.
I'm looking at my kids.
He's trying to
I'm not
explain
talking
himself
about
and his
me.
kids.
No.
My kids.
I'm all for, by the way, you know very well, we saw this yesterday, the whole point is to
Later.
apply this to life.
Right.
The problem is it's hard to apply before you don't understand.
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out what he's saying here.
I understand it.
Hold on a second. So all seichel is all about trying to have a pleasure of something.
At this moment I understand it. I don't understand
It's
it.
interesting.
It's amazing yourself.
No, you see it.
This is
You
where
see
we're
it.
screwing up, huh?
That's what we got.
I'll tell you why I got confused, because in the beginning he was talking about distinguishing us and animals. So but Pashtus, what's the difference between us and animals?
We have seichel.
Right, we have seichel. They are just surviving and existing. And we have seichel that we go control ourselves, we can reach higher.
Don't get into what you're saying.
And then when you talk in that context, you don't talk about pleasure, you talk about just simply the superiority of the human being that has seichel. So therefore God said, build this world, turn it into something. Animals can't do it. We can. Fine, we make a deal with Achtein. Now he's going to the... So there's a whole seichel that comes to the issue of Tainuk. So it's a whole...
Animals build houses.
And that's what I was, you see the flow, I'm like reading it, I'm thinking how the flow is. So he's really going to a whole new subject matter here. Okay. Yeah. Seichel Chacham is
The
basically...
animals build houses too, he's saying.
It's very interesting because you see,
Beaver.
another thing, secular world, academics, would be violently opposed to what we're saying here.
Why?
Because they think that body seichel, that's objective, and that's it, they're objective philosophers. That's not because of deep pleasure to build a home or anything. The whole idea here that they're basically saying is, your seichel chacham was given to you because your etzem nefesh has a pleasure in something, and seichel chacham is a way to get it. If you don't believe in etzem nefesh, you think you're just a maskil. You're just a grace of brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's not what he's saying here. He's saying seichel is not comes from somewhere.
It's never
There's no independence in it, really.
No, it's
not. It could be objective. It could be.
biased.
No, that's not what he says here. Actually, it's not biased because when you build a home, you're objective. You're not looking to. It's rooted. The reason you do it is because you were.
Pleasure.
It's going to give you something in return, but it doesn't mean it's an negabed of it.
Right.
No, it doesn't mean you're going to distort building it because you know that's not what he's saying here.
So seichel could be an objective,
But it's because the whole basis here is different than the secular thinking that everything starts from etzem nefesh. Nobody thinks like that. Nobody thinks that our behavior, conscious behavior, comes from rooted in a divine essence, essential personality.
Yeah, but they could say, but they would base it on the pleasure principle without getting into divine very easily.
That's Freud.
Yeah, so I mean, the only thing is we have something about the divine Otherwise, everybody sort of thinks like that.
Should we finish the Perek already?
Yes,
That's
why I
right, okay.
davened early.
Okay, at least one person has been using. So your seichel was for the Tainuk,
Not
right?
completely. I started a little earlier today.
What did he say yesterday, 2 days ago?
It's complicated.
That he doesn't want that he was saying that Tainug. If Seichel is Tainug and someone's a bar sichli be'etzem, but he'll only learn inyanim from Alikus.
And therefore, his rotzen will not, even though there may be pleasure, he won't go for it. How does that apply to this?
Yeah, how does it fit into the picture here?
There is actually to bring the case, the opposite case. It doesn't really fit into
show that on Tainug.
that. And it's not Chochmah. You see, there, it came down to show that rotzen and Tainuk don't have that close connection as Chochmah and Seichel do. Here, he's making the case that Chochmah and Seichel is nothing without Tainuk. And the Tainuk must have Chochmah and Seichel to be fulfilled. When it comes to Ratzon and Tainuk, a person could be an action. Again,
Even though
action is the Kedusha.
that will rule it, basically.
Yeah, it rules it. Like Kabbalah sale. Again,
He would enjoy it.
but it's not a pleasure thing. In other words, it doesn't, even if there is pleasure in it, it's of course of your machriach to have pleasure. Like the Tainus Cholim. Fasting is never pleasurable, but Einig Lei, it becomes his Einig today. It doesn't change his mahus. Remember, just because a person doesn't, from now on he's not going to enjoy food. That day he's fasting because that day it's changa, whatever.
Yeah.
It could be akshon is the kedusha,
Right.
or not kedusha. You can also changa in zachen.
Right.
So rotzen can force itself. It's like someone forces himself in the room. It's not the same as being invited in. Chochmah and Seichel and Tainug are like intimate guests.
Right.
They use each other. They need each other. It's a whole different. That's the bottom line. This is unbelievable stuff, man. You gotta, but it has to be learned many times. I can tell you right now, when I was working on Samach Vova, right, 10 times at least you have to learn this. Kipshut to be iyun, not makiv, to begin to start getting it. Really. First of all, you have to remember that Rebbe Rashab wrote this. He wasn't just sitting and writing. He thought it through for hours and hours. So you think you're going to not have to think through those hours and hours
Listen, you could
to get back to what he wanted to say? We're reading his words. We're going backwards. Reading the words after hours and hours of mezbonus. So we're not just going to get it because he said it. You have to now go into those hours, and those are the Rebbe Rashab's hours. We need a few more. No, I'm just explaining. So basically, you're not getting off easy here.
I'm looking.
Okay, how many examples you give from your yeshiva?
No, I'm looking at my kids.
Huh?
I'm looking at my kids.
I understand.
I'm talking to my son yesterday.
You know the story with
I
Rebbe
don't like
Marash?
this. I don't like this.
Story with Rebbe Marash. A guy came to Rebbe Marash, said that he has a friend. He did something terrible and needs a tikkun. So why didn't he come? He's ashamed to show himself to you, He sent me, so Rebbe Rashab said, why did he have to expose himself to you? He could have come to me and say, I have a friend,
And it was that guy.
Of course. By the way, even when people don't mean it, that's what it is. Often, people come to you with a problem, they tell you it's their friend and everything, and they don't even know they mean themselves, because how do they identify, why is it bothering them?
Should identify with it.
Yeah. The Hitler, the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek once by Fabrein was speaking about something. He was criticizing. Afterwards, a guy came in and said to Tzemach Tzedek, "Why are you insulting me in public?" So I didn't mention any names. So he said, "But whatever you describe is exactly me." So Rebbe Rashab, Tzemach Tzedek said, "I'm a hat maker. I make hats of different sizes, and I hang them up on the
Kids wear it.
and then people try them on. And then 1 second, this is the end of the line. He says, he tries it on and it fits. He says, and Emma Pataki gemeint. And that's who I meant. So you fit it, but I meant it. The Rebbe said it 3 times.
Wow.
I remember once the Rebbe said, someone wrote to him a letter, why are you criticizing me? So the Rebbe said, I never mentioned names, but now that you're saying that it fits the Pataki gemeint, you paskin in yourself. So basically, this is it. It's unbelievable because according to this, see, we start the premise that you have Tainuk, and you have Chochmah and Seichel, and they work around with each other. So then the Mamutza is not there. But if Chochmah and Seichel is just a way of Tainuk expressing itself, and therefore for us a bridge back to Tainuk, it's a whole different story. In other words, let's put it this way: if God created a structured system of logic in the state of Shtalshalos, because it's the only way to fulfill his Tainuk, like in this mashal, then by you understanding Seder Shtalshalos, you're not just understanding God, you're understanding his Tainuk, you're getting connected to his Etzem. That's the beauty here. So seichel, therefore, is not seichel. No, this stems with another approach. Everyone makes the mistake, they think that, Chabad is understanding godliness. It's not true. It's godliness that's infinite, can also manifest in seichel. It's elokus in seichel. It's not seichel understanding elokus. It's not a philosophy, but say Hasidic philosophy to understand God. It's godliness, how God can put himself inside of anything. He can put himself also in seichel. Even seichel is not master. That's what it comes down to. So when you learn Chassidus, you're really learning godliness except through seichel. And then through a mitzvah, you have Hashem through Kabbalah Seil. Or through other things, through Achnas Esachim, you have the Eibishter in Chesed. But when you learn, you have the Eibishter in Seichel. That's really what he's saying. That's amazing. And Chesed doesn't have this bridge, because Chesed is not the details of comprehending the plan. Okay.
So you're gonna have to say the same thing about Ratzon, the same way that to make it a real Mutza.
So Kabbalah Seil does not have this Mutza.
So Ratzon is like a mitzvah, basically. The connection that we have, like that's Ratzon Hashem.
Yeah, and Torah, remember the whole thing here is Torah? Remember we talked about Torah, the two things in Torah. Torah is the Mamutza, not because Torah has learning, yeah.
So we saw
What it does, he's doing here is elevating the human mind to unbelievable higher proportions of a divine experience. When you really use your mind, you're really experiencing God in his deepest possible way. The problem is, like when you come to talk about the muscle of the home, so here's a home. Someone that comes into it and starts looking at the details, they don't know the time of the owner or the one who built it. So they're beginning and seeing, so we come into the big world, we see a tree, very nice tree, this and this. And you become selfish and say, how can I make money from this? And you're missing the boat. You're missing the whole thing was put here to fulfill the tainug of the Creator. So we're basically living a lie. We're nishangera that we're in the details. The details only are possible because there was someone that had pleasure to have a home. And that's why you needed all the details. That's why maybe, the tziyurim, nefloim, lahafli, and so on. I always say this when people ask me about astrology and stars and stuff like that. I say, look, there's mazolas and all that. But you have to remember, God created all the stars and created all the beauty, all the wisdom. But if you get focused on that, it's like getting focused on a station and not reaching your destination. So the train is going and the side says, stop at a station. Oh, it's beautiful out here. Gets off. And he bleibt stecken in the middle. He never gets to where he has to get. There's the destination.
It's like being focused on Gemara too. You can say the same thing.
My friend, you can learn Gemara and you don't have Primus Atera. You have no God. It's true. And tell me how many religious Jews have God. Mitzvahs they may have. They have God. Shouldn't say Poshet. Most of us are, I'm not saying you made a choice. You're a Baal Tshuva. But most of us grew up with it. We were programmed. This is Lukamesha. His mother, here's a Shemayim.
Choice every day.
His mother's 75 trillion cells in his mother's body are religious. Okay, right?
Out of 74.
She planted in Angivotzel. She planted in him Yiras Hashem, whether he likes it or not. Right? In Megalvasser and all the little things a mother does before you could ask. And before you have 100%. Choice, and that's it, and you're forever trapped there, right, Moshe? You can't go anywhere.
100%. That's why I have major issues. You know that.
Yeah,
he's giving me the needle slowly.
It's true. There's no question. We all are our mother's children and our father's children, and it shapes us tremendously. The question is whether we have any freedom. I don't know. It's a big question.
Obviously,
it's another discussion. I just saw from the Baal Shem Tov Ameir Dikavort, he says we say in Shemoneh Esrei, Elokeinu, Elokei Avosenu. I said it there. Why? It should say the other order. The order is chronological. It's first Elokei Avosenu, then it's Elokeinu. First he was Elokei Avram, So he answers the Baal Shem Tov because it begins that way in your life. That first God comes from Avosenu, but the goal is that you become Elokeinu. And until it's not your God, it's not the God of your parents, is Nishdas. Pretty good, huh? Okay, so let's finish this Perek. One second. Zehu Mailas Keich HaChochma Ma Shemeichen the Gadlus in B'chinas Havdalah V'Afrosha.
Well,
I'm reading the parentheses on page Tov Yud Beis. So we established here with this mashal that Seichel, Chachma, and Tainug are okay. Got it. Zehu Milas. Okay. So Shosha Rishon is the Tainug Hanela Masri. Zehu Milas Achoy Chachma. This is the virtue or the quality, the supremacy of Kei Chachma. Masha Mechen the Gadlus ben B'chinas Havdalah Hafrosha. Mechen the Gadlus means mature intellect. Mature Mechen is in the form of Havdalah and Hafrosha. It's separate and apart. The Gimel Rishenis, which is Chacham bin Adas, in B'chinas HaShabbos, Shebachol Partzuf, B'chinas. Oh, Gimel Rishenis is the level of Shabbos Shebachol Partzuf in every phase, but it means every configuration.
Setting it up.
One second, let me just read the end so I'll understand myself. He's basically saying in the parentheses here, he's explaining, since Chachma and Seichel is not now, we now established it's no longer just Chachma and Seichel. It's an extension of time, of an inner pleasure that needs the Chachma and Seichel to fulfill itself.
I need a Shabbos.
So he's saying that's why Chachma is really, real Chachma is separate from everything. It's explaining how Chachma is different than all the other keiches. It's separate. You see, a person who's wise is usually separate from others. There's a certain element of separation. And he says, Api Kabbalah is the Gimel Rishenis, which is Chabad, is the level of Shabbos in each thing. What's Shabbos? Shabbos Shehu B'chinas Menucha, B'chinas Havdalah. Yeah, when you're like B'Menucha, when you're at peace and you're, in a sense of, what's the word for it? Inner comfort, whatever. That's what it is.
Serenity.
Serenity, yeah. What is that? Menucha is Tainug, Shabbos Tainug, Menucha, and that's a level of Helam, because really Tainug is a hidden thing. So that's what makes you apart.
That's
It's
like Beis Shammai.
It's made
It's
of.
like Beis Shammai. Comes first.
This is very interesting, because usually you say a Baal Mechen is separate from others because he has a certain, not necessarily arrogance, but a certain superiority complex, because he understands something. So when you're mind, not just separate from others, it's a certain, because he processes a lot. There's some people who are social animals; they always need people. A Baal Mechen can be alone more. There's a certain introvert nature to a Baal Mechen. He's saying that there's a different reason for it, not because Seichel is introverted, is because Seichel is connected to Tainug, and Tainug is connected to something concealed. The whole Seichel came from a Tainug Atzmi to build a home in the Mashal. So therefore the Chacham itself is also somewhat apart.
He's fulfilled by himself.
Yeah, it's apart.
He has it.
Right, that's what he's saying here. It's very, very interesting.
Shabbos should come first then.
No, it also comes down to, another reason. Why do people, for example, extroverts, they're very social, they need people because they get pleasure from that. You're alone, you're lonely, and you can be depressed, etc. So you go out to party and connect. A person who has Chachma, the Chachma is giving him that pleasure. It's an eternal thing he can enjoy.
He's needless in a sense. The Eibishter was like that, but all of a sudden he needed more.
The Rebbe was the epitome of that.
But he also...
Because those that knew him before the Nesius and later, the biggest pleasure he had when he was alone learning, more than anything else. The Rebbe once said in the Fabringen, as the Schwer had got a chush naskonas tziburis. Ich hab nicht den chush. Because the Frierdiker Rebbe, not that he didn't know that, but the Frierdiker Rebbe was fundamentally an Asken. He was a leader, an organizer. He was an administrator in a way. He read the yeshiva. He had a skill in people. The Rebbe was not that he wasn't a people person, but the Rebbe Etzem was a much more introvert, much more. No one knew who he was really, and even later I
Nobody
heard
still does.
the Maskiris. Yeah, no, I'm saying they tell you all the time. They ask, what did the Rebbe do most of the day? Learning. Even in the whole of the series, any free moment, back to learning. It wasn't like every free moment, how am I going to make the organization work better? Back to the Sefer. They say that. It was like,
Frank Karski has a story.
he did what he had. I know the Sukkah, learning the Gemara.
After
the 15 minutes.
After Akafas. Frank
Really?
says, Frank Bakarski said he was a bacher. He wasn't interested so much, whatever, with us. After
Ephraim
Akafas,
has confessed many of his sins.
it says,
It's
after
Abraham.
Akafas was a bacher, he saw the Rebbe in his room without his hat, und gesessen mit der Gemara and gelernt. That's after a heavy cup in the early years. He said that touched him, and he went to Montreal. It was before I went to Yeshiva in Montreal.
It's the opposite of us. We usually feel
And then
sick
I
with
said,
that.
I was inspired, and I was going and gesessen gelernt.
I heard the Simcha Seder from Lebel Groner. He said that the Rebbe, when a new mimer came out, the Rebbe would walk around the whole day with the mimer in his hand, this pilus, especially from the Rebbe Rashab. He would walk around, and no matter what happened, he could bring all kinds of news to the Rebbe. The Rebbe kept going back and would say sometimes, it's the Chazir Gishmak. And
Like walking out with a new collar.
and the Rebbe Rashab, and he said that you can't understand Chassidus without the Rebbe Rashab. So Groner asked the Rebbe, what about the Rebbe's Mamorim? The Rebbe said, doesn't mitzad discussions. I'm not being Havon and Chassidus, the Rebbe Rashab. So
Wow.
the Rebbe said, pretty good, huh?
Wow.
There was
He
the
has
big
the
fight.
same- he has the same thing on the book. The same, what's it called?
Zalman Moshe, when he came to the Rebbe Rashab, so he was, his mashpia was Greinim. And then he loved it, Then he stopped going to Shiurim because he was only learning Mamorim from Rebbe Marash. From Taten, hat man gesagt, the Rebbe the Tate. So the Rebbe Rashab said to him, why don't you go to Shiurim? He said, I learned the Shiurim from the Rebbe Marash, not from Rebbe. So the Rebbe Rashab closed his eyes from it and said, okay, good, say this. He understood and let him alone. Okay, that's another story.
From his kashrus.
Well, the Rebbe Rashab had both milas. It was his kashrus and havona, so that helped. Yeah. Okay, let's finish this last. We'll finish the last end. Okay. Now he goes back to what he started in the previous period. What you were waiting for, the skull,
Yeah.
skull and bones, right? In the previous period, Reish Beis, he explained Al Pi Kabbalah, actually not Reish Beis, but what am I talking about? This time flies. Perek Reish. Let me correct that. Now he goes back to what he started at the beginning of the Maimer, Perek Reish. And now we'll understand what it says in Zohar Neitz Chaim, the Golgalta Meir Achatzenis Atik, the B'chinas Makif. Then in the Golgalta, in the skull, which is only radiates the external part of Atik, of pleasure. Atik, pleasure. The B'chinas Makif, in the form of Makif. B'chachmas Timah, Meir B'chinas Primis Atik, B'chinas Pnimi, B'chinas Eslapshus Mamash. And a Chachmas Timah, what you have is a reflection, a radiation radiates the pnimius of Atik. In a form of pnimi, internally, b'chinas v'slapshus mamish. Mamish completely dressed, integrated. Well, l'cheda had a rotzen l'mayla b'chinas ha'chachma. L'cheda rotzen, which was Golgalta, is higher than chachma, like we learned till now.
Yeah.
It's makif.
Yeah. Well, the now move on. According to above, it's understood. The be'emes ha'rotzen l'mayla.
Where is it in the skull of the Arik, the Ratzon? That's what I thought we were saying as the Chetzonius of Atik. I always thought it was Arik, but now I don't
No,
know.
Chetzonius of Atik is Arich.
No, it's Chetzonius of Kesser.
Kesser is made up of two parts, Atik and Arich.
Right,
Hold on.
Arik is
Atik is higher than the skull. Atik is higher
than the skull.
Right. Okay, the skull is compared to Rotzen.
Okay.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, Arik. But that's not the Chetzonius of Atik.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
That's the Chetzonius. That's the Chetzonius of
It has. It's the Chetzonius of Kesser, but it has the Chetzonius of Atik. Goes into Arich. Arich relates to the Chetzonius of Atik. Chachma, Istamah, relates to the Primius of Atik. Remember, the Chetzonius of any higher level goes into the next level. That's a rule.
Okay.
So Kesser's two parts, Atik and Arich. Arich receives from Atik.
Okay.
But what part does it receive from Atik? Only the Chetzonius of Atik. That's what he's saying. Okay, here we go. So he says that's he's answering now. So the reason for that is understood from above. The truth is, Rotzen is higher than Chachma. Why? Because Rotzen is part of the Atzmi of the Nefesh, part of Kesser. But it's only the Chetzenius of it. And that's why Rotzen comes in the form of makif. That's Chitzenius. And Tainug is not the cause for Rotzen. Rotzen has its own place in Atzmis. Tainug is not its cause. That's why we saw that Rotzen can dominate, can rule over Tainug. And therefore that which radiates in Rotzen from Tainug is only an extension and a reflection of Tainug, not Tainug itself.
Wow.
Whereas Chochmah is the paradox, the opposite. Even though it's not Atzmi, it's not part of the unconscious self. Sibosehu ha-Tainug. Its cause is Tainug. And that's the Mahus of Chochmah and Seichel is Mahus of Chochmah and Seichel is Tainug. Like you said, Chochmah hu ha-Tainug. That's why when the Atzmus of Chochmah is drawn forth, it brings with it the Plimius and Atzmus Nefesh Mamash. He's giving now an example, like when you give birth. Shatipa, the seed. Nimshechis ma'atzmus hamoyach sheba atzim keich ha-Chochmah. Like it says in Tanya, the seed, the male seed comes from the mind, from the brain, from the etzem of the meach, where you have the etzem keich ha-Chochmah. The etzem ha-Tainug, shemeled b'deimelei muhus nefesh mamish. And it comes from the etzem of the pleasure that you're going to give birth to someone that's exactly like you. Not exactly, that's similar to you. So it's like that's an unbelievable pleasure. So that's where the seed is rooted in the Chochmah and in the Tainug, the Atzmus. That the father will give all his whole essential keiches to this child, to the point that even the keich haben could even be more yafa, even more powerful, more beautiful, but more superior to the father's keiches. So he's basically saying that Chochmah
need some more time.
Brings that deepest level of the nefesh, as we see in birth. The beginning primis v'atzmas ha'chochma atzmas ha'tainug, and the reason is because the primis v'atzmas ha'chochma, the essence and the inner dimension of chochma is the essence of pleasure, of tainug. The primis abba who primis atik mamish. As we say that the primis of abba, the inner part of chochma abba, is the primis of atik mamish. Kolshkein shu came b'chinas chochmas timah. If that's the case with regular Chochmah, how much more so with Chochmah Stima, the concealed Chochmah within Arich? Shubchin's Primus Atik Mamish. The Chochmah Stima connects to the Primus of Atik Mamish. That's why in Idrizut and Zohar is called Meichid Atika Kadisha Mamish. Is the Meichim of Atika Kadisha. He said that all back in Perek Shin. I'm just looking there a moment. One second, hold on. The Atika Kadisha. Okay, great.
Saying that the pleasure that the father sees is because he's giving over to his kid all his.
In Tanya he says that the tipa is rooted in the meichem because and the meichem the etzem nefesh because giving birth to someone is not just another action. You're giving your whole essence is going into your child, and your child can even be greater than you.
Right, the tip is coming from the essence. But that's not your pleasure, that's from the tippa. Because you're giving your kid all your essence. You have different type of pleasure.
No, but what's the root of the pleasure? It's not just a physical pleasure. It's the root of the pleasure. What's the root? Why Taki sexuality has pleasure? According to Chassidus? Because it's the pleasure of creation, of creating a new life. You feel that your own type, it's a separate thing. Why Taki the Abish to make pleasure in the act of sexuality?
Godliness. It's really godliness.
It's expressing godliness, the premise of it. The truth is that the Baal Shem Tov says every pleasure, when a person enjoys even a good food, it's because his neshama likes the sparks in it. Except we separate the two. That's the thing. Sexuality in Yiddishkeit is not considered, pleasure in sexuality is a mitzvah.
We'll get into that at a whole different time.
No. My point. I'm not making. I'm not getting. I'm not,
You're still going to say it's group therapy.
No.
I don't want to go.
No. My point. I was really talking more theoretical here.
What you're saying is correct. It's a
Yeah.
very holy thing and
The fact
very
that-
open, very open, very open. Very
Yeah, but the fact that some people, it's because like anything, like people gold it says was created for the Beis Hamikdash.
Right.
But no, if the Bechira is mentioned, could use gold. You can build a Chet Egel,
Right.
the Egel Hazov.
I thought it was made of.
Yeah. Let's just finish this. One more. Yesh Lemer Shazel Masha B'Golgelis, and this is Yesh Lemer. We could say that this is what the Golgelis, the skull, Mislabish Chesed the Atik Yemen. It says in some places that the Golgelis is Mislabish Chesed of Atik Yemen. So b'chachma mislabish gvura da'atik kemen, and in chachma you have gvura. Why? The chesed is deeper. He says no. If you do it b'chinas chesed, dima yeshu b'chinas hagilui. Even though chesed is gili revealed, it's a light and energy that does not get coarse, does not get thickened. Nevertheless, chesed is really external. B'chinas gvura da'atik kemen, b'chinas pnimius atik kemen. Gvura, on the other hand, is the pnimius of atik kemen. Shabbat b'chinas hagvura. That's why Gvura has a certain intensity. The intensity of Gvura, the power, Gvura, strength, comes from the Pnimius. And that is Malubish and manifests Davkin Chachmas Timah. He says, look into Likutei Torah for the beard of Seis Osis, I guess, if you want to have some more explanation.
We'll leave this to the enlightened.
Okay. This is
Heavy.
no, it's heavy, but
It's like,
that's something.
boom.
Some strings are being
And
tied
somehow
together.
we lost Watson in the whole thing.
Cool.
I mean, we just somehow lost Watson. I lost Watson. I'm sure it's there, but I lost it completely with this whole thing. We're concentrating so much on and here it just says Watson is just a reflection or a
Sunday we're still here, yeah?
It's on the line. It's online today.
Yeah,
How do I receive it? Can you send me a text of how to?
it's very easy. It's just a link to Ustream, and that's that.
go to Ustream.